Okay, good afternoon everyone. I'm glad that you could come out on a crummy day in Melbourne and make the effort to come along to this public forum community education afternoon. So my topic was what's normal. It's vulva, not vulgar, and I realised I forgot to put my name on the slide. That's a little bit bad, but anyway, it's mostly my own work. So we're going to start with this, 100% natural and all normal. And this is a, plaster cast of the Great Wall of Vagina. Some of you might be familiar with it. Of course, it's not vaginas, it's vulvas. And if you have a look at them, they're all vastly different. Artwork has been put together by a man called Jamie McCartney in England, and he's made a 9-metre long triptych with 400 plaster casts of vulvas. The women were in age from 18 to 76, so right across the reproductive spectrum, no kids. There was mothers and daughters, there was identical twins, there's even transgendered men, so men who've had a vagina made for them. And he said that the motivation was that this was art with a social conscience, and to highlight that vulvas are different as men, well, as different as every woman and every woman's face. So the next thing I thought was, well, what's in a name? Why do we call it a vulva? And vulva is derived from the Latin for wrapper. And really it's about the wrapping of the opening of the vagina. So the vulva is the outer part. Vagina is derived from the Latin for sheath, in contrast to penis, which was from gladius, for a sword. So that's a pretty obvious mental image, isn't it, of a penis in a sword, a sword in a sheath. I mean, we can cut to the chase. When I was putting this together, I was telling my husband, oh yeah, I've found out what vulva comes from and vagina. I just thought I might get that. He goes, well, what about clitoris? Isn't that more important? And so I thought, well, that's a pretty good question. What about clitoris? And clitoris is derived from Greek, klitoris, which was for door tender, which is also pretty interesting given the position and what it does. And it was also the word for the female organ back then, and also from kleis, meaning a key, by which one gains entrance to a door. And I think that's a very good analogy to get entrance through the door of the vulva into the vagina, which is what a lot of people are looking for. So the other things was, what about in a name? Those were the anatomically correct names, but I bet you can think of lots of names, and that's a few up there. Fanny, innies, outies, muff, bush, slash, pussy, vijay, vajazzle, snatch, junk, tango, hoo-ha, the list goes on. And I thought perhaps you might, even though we're a small group, you might turn to your person who's sitting next to you and tell them, what do you call your vulva or your vagina? Because you probably have your own pet name, you probably have your own pet name with your partner, and they're not necessarily going to be the names that I've got up there. You know, all too embarrassed to get engaged in that. Well, after that, there is, of course, that there are plenty of rude ones, too rude to repeat, and it's often, unfortunately, the colloquial words we use to describe a vulva and a vagina are often used as pejoratives, and I'm sure you can think of two main ones, but I'm not mentioning that here. I certainly shy away from that use. Okay, so what's what in the vulva? So the vulva, technically, can I use the pointer? Is that the pointing part? Okay, so the vulva is this part, and if I push the button, it should jump up and down. Yep, okay. What are the names for the actual parts around here? So we've got the pubis, which is the area up here, sometimes called the mons pubis. It should be covered in hair, but these days it often isn't, so we don't always see hair on it. Then we've got the clitoris, where most of the action is for girls. Then we've got the urethral meatus, which is in here, where your urine comes out. Young girls might call that a wee hole, and that's where this is, just below the clitoris. Then we've got the labia majora, the larger, fatter lips on the outside. Then we have the labia minora, the thinner lips, and this drawing is not really what I like to show because they're really almost non-existent in this drawing. They're getting a bit too close to the Barbie doll perfection. Then we've got the vestibule, which is the opening in front of the vaginal opening. the introitus, which is the area here, the opening to the vagina, and then this little squiggly bit here is the anus, not very well drawn. So it looks a lot like that. And it looks quite a bit like this orchid flower. I like this because it does also look like a vulva with some labia minora and an introital opening and maybe a clitoris or midline coming up here. So orchids are quite sexy sort of flowers. Maybe this is a better picture. I like this picture because the labia minora are longer in here. And so I think this gives a bit of variation to the shape and size and colour, shape and size of the vulva. So what about what's further up? So oftentimes one of the things that's been found is that women use the wrong language for vulvas and vaginas. So like Jamie McCartney's plaster cast, where it's called the Great Wall of Vagina. Of course, it's not vaginas, it's vulvas. So women confuse where their vagina is. So your vagina comes off your vulva and comes up here like this, and hence the name for the sheath. So it's this part here. Then this is your cervix, where you get your pap smear from, and this is your uterus, where a pregnancy grows. In front is the bladder, sitting in front, and the urethra coming down here, in the front here. So that opens into the urethral meatus. At the back, you have the rectum, in here where your poo's going to come out, and your anus down here. But oftentimes women have confused vagina and vulva, so the vulva is outside here and the vagina is going up inside. This picture doesn't show it very well, but then there's the ovaries and fallopian tubes are up here within the pelvis. So where do we get our information and what's on the web? I love this little slide. I have poached it unashamedly from the Labia Library, and I've got the website at the end so that you may direct yourselves to have a good look at the Labia Library. But I love the idea of Ryan Gosling saying, "Hey, girl, my perfect Sunday is a trip to the farmer's market and hearing your thoughts on how we can challenge unrealistic ideals set by porn culture." So that's where most of us are getting our information from, the web and other things. Did you know that what you see in the magazines must comply with guidelines for classifications of publications? In reality, the classification board requires that labia minora and the clitoris are airbrushed out, so you don't actually see labia minora. So if they're coming through past the labia majora, you won't see them because they have to be airbrushed out and of the photographs. And so we get shown a picture of a Barbie doll type of aesthetic that we should all be aiming for, when in reality vulvas are very, very different to that. So you could actually look at a penis in porn magazines or in any magazine, no airbrushing required, but it's considered that for us to look at vulvas, to look at labia, it's too challenging, it's too rude almost for us to be able to see that. So there's a big difference in the values that we espouse about what we can see. And in porn, okay, so in porn, images in pornography are airbrushed out as well. So nothing is natural. And a lot of young people, a lot of people today around the world get most of their information about what genitalia are looking like from porn because there isn't the opportunity to look at anything else. Porn stars themselves have often had labial surgery, so they are not a really good measure of what normal is. And I love the idea here, he's looking very down at heel. Hey girl, sometimes I get so sad thinking about the unrealistic representation of female genitals in pornography. And so how about we do some challenging things? If we think about what else is normal about the vulva and vagina, often patients come in and they're wondering about, is this a normal smell that I've got? So every vagina has its own unique scent, and that's not Chanel No. 5, and it's not freshly baked bread either. So it's very important that we consider what our normal smell might be. You have a smell from the vagina because of a number of different things, and that's the normal bacteria, which should be a heavy reliance on lactobacilli, and we learnt in our conference that there's at least 4 different types and many, many more, and there's actually hundreds of bacteria in the vagina. but it's the smell is based on the normal bacteria. The sort of diet you eat might alter that. The gland secretions that you make will also alter that. And that's varied woman to woman, just as the look is varied woman to woman. The secondary type of things that might just influence that might be the underwear. I haven't got a fancy slide to show you, but one of the things that one of my friends said is a gynecologist's best friend is the G-string or thong. And you can imagine that the little string acts like a speed highway for the bacteria. They're already nice and close, but it's a great way of seeding some extra bacteria around where you might not really want them. Hygiene, of course, we don't recommend that you soap your vagina or vulva, but it's about just washing with water or not, and not applying creams or Femfresh or any other sort of thing. So your hygiene practices can influence the sort of smell that you've got. And toilet habits. Every little girl learns you wipe from front to back, not back to front, and all those sorts of things, and make sure you go to the toilet in the first place. So that's the sort of thing that can influence your smell. The other sort of things that can happen is your vagina secretes something called pheromones, a technical word for scented compounds. They're supposed to trigger sexual interest and excitement in you and your partner. So if you don't have pheromones, you're not going to smell right. It's a bit like those butterflies in California that go around and they can smell the female butterfly from 10 kilometres away, or your dog, if there happens to be someone else that he likes close by. Of course, we're not quite as sensitive to that anymore. It's knocked out of our genetics, but we still make pheromones. So your vagina should smell like normal. Sometimes it's easier to say what it shouldn't smell like. In fact, it's always easier to say what it shouldn't smell like. It shouldn't smell like rotting fish. So if it smells like that, it's not normal. It shouldn't really smell like rotting anything. That also is not normal. If you've got that sort of a problem, then you're probably going to have something called bacterial vaginosis or BV. Some of you might have heard of that. That's about an overbalance of bacteria. It's about good bacteria versus bad bacteria. And the bad bacteria, to use a loose sort of term, are anaerobic bacteria. They live without any oxygen. They don't need any oxygen to keep them going. And they can make a foul or rotting smell, just a bit off sometimes. This is also about the pH balance, and it's very important to vaginal health. And so smell can change when your pH changes. A vagina should be at about a level of 4. So this is the acid-base balance. It goes from 0, very acid, to 12, very basic, 7's in the middle. So when you get a pH-neutral soap is about 7. But the vagina likes to be at 4, and the bacteria that live in the vagina, the lactobacilli, help it to stay there. So it's a sort of a self-cleaning, self-sustaining organism. And sometimes if the pH is changing, then also the smell will change. Semen is at a pH of 8, and so that can alter the pH and also alter the smell. And some of those things can impact on what the smell is like. Well, what's the good news about a vagina? It's self-cleaning, like I said. It's like that nanotech glass, but it's biological. So that makes it a lot easier to look after. You don't really need to do too much to it. It naturally produces some discharge that helps take out the bacteria and germs. And we're often asked, well, what's a normal discharge? Women come along all the time saying, is my discharge normal? It looks like there's too much, or it's changed somehow. So a normal regular discharge is mostly white, and it has some yellow, and it can dry yellow on your underwear. And I usually say, it's going to be yellow, dries yellow on your underwear. You can't really wash it out. After a few months, 6 months, chuck your undies away and get some new ones. But if it is grey or frothy or neon green, and that's an alarming sort of a thought, or neon yellow that you can't see very well, it's not good, and you do need to see someone about that. So what about if your vagina or your vulva is not right? Well, how do you know? Well, it might be itchy. There might be a bad smell about it. You might have a pain, or you might take your mirror and have a look and go, that doesn't look right to me. Then you need to see a doctor. Please don't rely on your pharmacist. Come and see a doctor. But you do not need to douche, You do not need to scrub your vagina or vulva. You don't need to wash your vulva out with soap. Would you wash your mouth out with soap? Ugh, you would not do that, only if you were very, very bad and you'd been swearing because something went wrong. So make sure you see a doctor. So what about colour when we think about the look? Well, colour variation is normal in a vulva. It should be, it's different. It can be the same colour as skin, but often it might be lighter or darker, just like the lips on your face. So there's great variation. Just like the number of faces that you see, there's a great variation. So your vulva could be pink or brown or reddish or purple, lots of different variations in colour. It shouldn't have dark black spots in it. That's not a good look. And you might need to come and see somebody if you think there's an issue. So what does normal look like? And this slide is from a recent endeavour from the Guardian newspaper in England, and they have released a series of 4 videos on the web made by a film producer and a journalist. They had some interesting information about it, that women did not know what their vulvas look like. We already know that, that's why we're having today. And so they've put together these videos. And from the first one, it's called the Vaginal Dispatches, something like that. They asked women to draw their own vulva and to send it in to them. Within about 2 or 3 weeks, they had 18,500 vulvas drawn and sent in. And it was like this, I trawled through the website, there wasn't one that looked the same as any other. And it's a very brilliant project, and any one of you might like to go online with the reference at the end and send them a picture of your own vulva. They'll be thrilled to receive it. So you can see there's any number of differences. I don't know if this little pointer thing is working, but they're all vastly different. Long labia, short labia, open introitus, closed, hair, no hair, all variants. And they also, normal looks like this. And you can see there's labia here that are slightly longer. The normal length of labia is anywhere from 5 millimetres to about 5 centimetres. We would say they were too long if they went right out past where your groin crease is. But other than that, this is all a normal variation. All of these are normal, labia tucked in, larger labia majora, smaller labia majora. They're all vastly different. And these are the useful sources of information that I have. This is the website for the Guardian newspaper and the project that they've got with the 4 videos. The Great Wall of Vagina, if you'd like to order your own plaster cast, to do your own plaster cast of your vulva and then compare and see how you're going. The Labia Library, which is a wonderful resource in Victoria, a Victorian-made, shipped around the world, 196 countries, something like 13 million hits, 176,000 people visit the site daily. It has normal vulvas, which for copyright reasons I couldn't put in my talk for you. And it has those little memes, and it has information that is extremely useful for people to have anonymous information that would be helpful. Then Jean Hale's organisation, who's running the seminar today, and of course, your mirror. So don't forget to have a look at what you've got, and then you will know. That's normal. Thank you.